Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre. Episode 55.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's been a little while.
I am rusty.
Yeah, because we've been resting on the laurels of our live podcast from Wizard World.
World.
Thank you, Wizard World. Maybe you're not going to be around next year, but that was great for us.
It was fun.
It was a lot of fun, and
Yes.
so I think we can lead off by saying thank you to everybody who came by and visited us.
Yeah, thousands,
Yeah,
hundreds,
maybe 1,000.
maybe 1,000. Lots of people.
Yeah, and who joined us for trivia and a good time and some great cosplay.
I've got to say, I think I still am stumped on, I would say, a solid 50% of the trivia we were throwing at the general public.
Yeah, and I think
I'm not there.
Well-
I'm not there. So if you came by the booth, we threw some questions at you. You couldn't answer them. Don't feel bad.
Yeah,
Because I can't either.
but it is stunning what I think is common knowledge and what everybody else thinks is common knowledge.
Right.
It's very, very different.
Oh, yes, yes.
All the more reason for you to listen to this podcast
That's
because this
right.
is us getting you wise to the ways of horror.
Getting me wise to the ways of horror. Everybody's a winner here.
Yay!
Everyone's a winner.
Slowly, we're going to make there's less charlatans in the world.
That's right. That's right.
So
Tonight, though, we are not talking about Wizworld because we've kind of recapped a lot of pieces and parts of Wizworld. Lots of pieces and parts.
So now we're back to our normal format, and I think this time we're doing a special request episode for one of our Patreon supporters.
That's right.
Ian Parker, and he came up with this idea.
Brilliant idea.
And if you happen to
that threw me for a loop.
yeah, this
Because I'm not big on LARPing. Eric's our resident LARPer.
it's not
He's dressed oddly as Xena, the warrior princess.
yeah,
tonight.
this bronze brassiere is a little bit chafy. Just
LARP.
but this is one of those
That'd be a good name for a horror film.
LARP. Well, actually, tonight, well, we'll touch back on LARP. Remind me to remind you of LARPing at the end of the show because there's a little bit of something I have in grave digging that's going to play along with that.
Okay, all right, all right. I'll be here for it.
So, just so everybody else out there knows, if you want to actually get a special request podcast, join our Patreon supporters, and
yeah.
for about the price of a bus ticket a month.
Yes.
You too can get a little bit of influence over us. You can
little
lord
love.
over us.
Little Scariest Things podcast love. And we'll throw you some T-shirts. We'll throw you some stickers. We'll throw you some buttons. We'll throw you all sorts of stuff.
As much stuff as we can throw at you right now. And by the way, we do have T-shirts available. We haven't yet put them. We've got to figure out how to shill our merch on our website. We're not that clever yet.
If you want one, just holler and we can figure out a payment. Six pack of beer, a bus ticket,
right?
Whatever.
And you get a women's small, whatever that works.
We'll take anything.
Yeah. I want to do a big thank you shout out to one of our new Patreon supporters, Brian Gilson. Thank you much.
Thanks, Brian.
He joined us at our top tier, so we got a T-shirt heading your way, Brian.
Very cool.
So you're going to have to come up with an idea for us to broadcast for you.
Yes.
So I trust you're listening.
Yes.
And we anticipate with bated breath. So
bring it on, Brian.
Yeah.
Bring it on. We can take whatever you got coming our way. We can do it.
So
I'm even willing to talk about the Night of the Lepus for an hour. Whatever it takes.
Night of the Lepus is awesome.
Night of the Lepus.
It's awful and it's awesome at the same time. So the theme for today is coming up with what is the horror movie plot that you would least like to experience in real life, and you can take this from either the protagonist perspective or from the villain / monster perspective, because
or you can go to my therapist and you can talk to them and they can tell you.
Draw it out of you. So how does that make you feel? Tell me about your mother. And
Mother.
So I took two perspectives on this, and I think Mike
right.
and I took a couple of different paths down this road because
Yes.
this was a very clever idea from Ian, and I think it took a bit of interpretation, and so my perspective was, what is the scariest, most plausible scenario that I could be subjected to that I could not possibly escape from, and if I was able to extricate myself from this scary situation, what would be my prospects of having a normal life?
Wow.
Yeah, and in some scary situations, at least, I'd be able to make the heroic sacrifice. And it's like, go without me. And then the zombies eat me, and then I come back as a zombie myself. And that's not the worst ending.
No.
Because at least I could potentially live forever as a rotting corpse.
So you looked at what would happen before, concurrent, and after
Yeah.
said horror movie
Yeah.
experience.
And I think that you'll see from my descriptions, that they had a sad beginning, a sad middle, and a horrible end, right? And this would suck. What is the big cupful of suck that I wouldn't want to have to deal with?
I just went straight with suck. I just went straight up suck. Not how I would feel after the suck,
but
during the suck.
sucking process.
Not before the suck, not after the suck, just during the suck.
I have one that's actually
This
got a
sucks.
literal suck kind of a. It's completely repulsive, and I wouldn't want to deal with it. So I think that there are some things where I thought, it's like, if I played a villain, there'd be some kind of cases where it might be pretty cool. Like if I was King Kong, that'd be a good life. You're the biggest, baddest thing around.
You have
and you get
no
to,
natural predators.
and if you can beat the hell out of a T-Rex, that's not bad. And
Save for Baragon.
Did Baragon? Yeah, he was a turtle thing, wasn't he?
Baragon. I don't think Baragon.
I don't think they have fight, but
King
you
Kong
never
never
know. I
mixed it
mean,
up.
we might get in the future Godzilla verse. We might get Godzilla or King Kong versus Baragon,
Yes,
which would be kind of cool.
I'll
Shout
take
out to the Kaiju cast. Is this
Yes.
going to happen?
I'll take it.
So I think that if you look at something like Dracula, it's powerful and sexy and scheming, and and I think that from the protagonist view, Eric's rule number 2. I've often talked about my rule number 1, which
What is rule number 2? After 55 podcasts, I don't think I know rule number 2.
Well, I've mentioned it before, so you might know of this, but
Okay.
it's like the success of a horror movie is dependent on a great disparity between the power of the villain and the victim.
You have never mentioned that before.
Oh, come on.
For the record,
I'm
that
pretty
has
sure
never
we're
been
going to have to
mentioned
go
before.
back to what defines a horror movie. Because,
never been mentioned before.
well, for example, like Predator.
I think we should go back to what defines a horror film. That's slight transgression or digression rather here. I think that would be a good one to go back to.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well, if nothing else, I'm putting a marker down now.
Yes.
To say
Power and balance.
Eric's rule number 2. You don't even have a rule number 1 yet.
Power and balance.
Yeah, power and balance is number 2, and I think that certainly, those are like, if I was part of the Predator crew, I could probably come out of that one alive with a couple of lucky shots, and I think the Predator.
My
got
rule
lucky.
number 1 is: do I have to lift my feet off the ground at the movie theater?
that reflexive.
Is something going to grab me from under the seat? That's my rule.
Tingler, because that's like in the seat, and then just like the whole butt jolt kind
That's
of a thing.
right.
That'll make you hop. So Mike, how did you approach this?
Well, so I consulted a psychology website. I consulted Psych Central.
Oh wow.
And what they suggested was, when you're in a scenario like some of which you've already described, there's a couple things you should do. You should, 1, notice your thoughts. You should notice when your thoughts slip from realistic anxieties into unusual or unlikely scenarios. Number 2, you should regain the control that you do have in the scenario. You can't control everything, but consider the realistic options available to you in the moment.
So you're going Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warrior. Take control of your situation.
Number 3, speaking of Nightmare on Elm Street, face your fears.
There you go.
The single most effective way to overcome your fears is to face them. And number 4, see a psychotherapist. You may or may not have time when a zombie is charging at you to see a psychotherapist, but you might have time to, number 2 and number 3, regain the control that you do have and potentially face those fears. Nice. Number 1, you probably won't have time to notice your thoughts because you are going to be so goddamn freaked out.
Right. There's a man in my house and he's got a knife.
We've traced the call. It's coming from inside your house. So
you could hang up, call your therapist. That's and it's like, what does this mean? What's the existential threat here? Is this actually me calling myself? I'm not sure.
Barbara, where are we with this?
So
did we talk about this last week?
So to give Ian a little bit of a plug here, his scenario.
Yeah, this is the scenario that freaks Ian out the most. This is his.
He said,
bucket of suck.
My worst case, most pants-wetting, hair-whitening horror scenario has to be suffering an eternity of torture at the hands of the Cenobites, or as any of the protagonists from the Hellraiser films. Bondage isn't my bag in the first place, let alone the extreme skin-tearing, bone-piercing kinks that the Cenobites are all about. An hour of that would be bad. Enduring this forever would be the absolute worst.
Cenobites, the Legion of Gash. No, the...
Wait, something.
It's not the Legion of Gash. It's the something of Gash.
Legion of Rash?
Gash.
So but I think that's a pretty good setup for, it's like a lifetime of torture and pain. That's pretty rough. Wouldn't
you think there's a law of diminishing returns there?
I do. I think so.
Like at some point you go, all right, Cenobites, you've done your worst. Get to the skin tearing again. I guess if you have to.
Yeah, that you'll just go into shock and eventually
your mind will turn
numb.
off. Your mind will turn off,
or you will enjoy it at some point.
Well, potentially, sure.
You never know.
Yeah.
Some people, that's a kink.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's very possible. I mean, a lot of people, their synapses get like completely rewired in stressful situations to the point where either A, they become numb to it, or B, they come up with alternate coping mechanisms, or C, they call.
I love how this is turning into a therapy session.
They call their psychotherapist.
I think there's some people in leather who are threatening me with hooks.
Right.
What does that mean? So, do you want to lead off with your scenario, or do you want to see?
No, I'm happy to.
Okay.
Yeah. So my number one. So not my number one. My number 4 on the fearsome foursome list. The scenario that kind of freaks me out in cinema. The one that is a relatively modern incantation is the fast zombie.
Oh.
The fast zombie is something that kind of freaks me out because you, A, don't have time to notice your thoughts, B, you can't regain any control, and C, you can't really face your fears because they are coming at you so fast. I mean, obviously, the one that sort of broke the mold was 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
Of course, the 2002 British post-apocalyptic horror film directed by Danny Boyle. And then, of course, Train to Busan, the 2016 South Korean zombie apocalypse action thriller film. Both of those set the stage. I mean, you can argue that Train to Busan sort of picked up where 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later left off, and just took on a completely different tone that was previously established by Danny Boyle. Because I mean, those zombies are so fast and so gnarly. Yeah. I mean, it becomes, at some point it becomes video game-esque. But the thing that I like about obviously the Romero zombie, and the thing that's somewhat. I mean, to your point, can you, or not to your point about, sort of engaging in the psyche of the protagonist is sort of like, can you put yourself into that situation? And with the Romero zombies, you can put yourself into the situation.
It's The Walking Dead.
You can, and you can kind of think through it.
Yeah.
Whereas with with Train to Busan and certainly 28 Days Later, you don't have the time or the capacity to do that, and that to me is kind of
it's overwhelming.
It is, yeah,
and I think that you'd find yourself just getting completely swamped. And by the time the one thing is, do you know it's coming?
Right.
I mean, that's if you
are you
prepared for it?
It is rife for bad decision making.
Yeah, and because Max Brooks,
which is kind of I will say that I think part of the brilliance of Train to Busan is that even though it's rife with decision making and there's lots and lots of poor decisions and lots of very selfish decisions made in the film, that's what makes it so great is that the poor decisions are absolutely explainable, right?
Yep.
Because you think, oh my gosh, that guy made a poor decision, but he had no time to make a decision. So it is somewhat excusable. It is somewhat forgivable.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you put yourself into that position and you had your two boys with you,
right?
You'd go full on,
Angry Dad would come out,
and that was you got to see the heroic dad come out in action. So I'd be fully expecting you to try and pull that off, but I wouldn't give you much of a chance because the zombies are too damn fast.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And then Hank might just sort of wander away from you, and then it's like then you'd panic and you'd make terrible decisions.
Right. So that's I think that to me is as my number 4. Loss of control, bad decision making, not having the time to think through an equation, not having the ability to sort out in your mind.
Can't call a friend.
Can't call a friend. Can't phone a friend. Can't take multiple
choice.
Can't do 50-50. You got to react right then and there, and chances are you're going to make a pretty goddamn bad decision.
I kind of love how actually that you can make Who Wants to Be a Millionaire into a proper sort of chain of command decision tree for horror movies, right?
We're copywriting that.
That's right.
Regis Philbin, if you're listening, that's copyrighted.
That's on us.
All right, number 4 for you, sir.
My fearsome foursome number 4 is a fairly realistic scenario.
Okay.
This is one that I could see actually. I mean, one, it really actually happened, and two, it's multiple days of suck.
Happened to you?
Not to me, but it happened in. This is open water.
Oh yeah.
And I think worse than Jaws, because in Jaws, I think you're in the water, shark hits you, you're dead, right? And you don't have the prolonged agony. The horrible thing that happened.
Well, with Jaws, you're in the water, you can get out of the water.
Yes,
with open water. You're in the water,
and you've been left behind. Susan and Daniel, who are our protagonists in open water. It's not just the sharks. You've got jellyfish that are stinging you. You might drown.
You got
hypothermia, starvation, dehydration.
Yep.
There's the blame game. You're caught out there with your spouse, and and the anguish of whether you made a terrible decision and why, and that you might have been responsible for. You don't know why this is happening.
You can't notice your thoughts.
Yeah.
You can't call a psychotherapist.
Right. There's no phone a friend when you're stuck in out near the Great Barrier Reef.
Your spouse is not a psychotherapist.
No. And the sharks don't want to hear your problems, right? It's I think a combination of physical exhaustion, mental anguish, seeing your partner go down, get lunched by sharks, and knowing that you're next.
Yeah,
it's slow, it's scary,
that was about
sad.
That was like the last. How long was that? That was like the last probably 15 minutes of the film.
Yeah,
maybe longer.
Yeah, well, I think that Daniel, I think he died and he was floating. He was a floating corpse, and then the sharks came after him.
Right.
And then there was blood in the water, and then Susan started getting nipped. I mean, he had gotten hit and he bled out. Right. And then and these were like white tip reef sharks or something like that. They're not. Right. It wasn't El Monstro, tiger shark, or great white. These were
sand sharks.
Yeah, these are sharks that are roughly size of a dog,
8-footers,
or
6
size
footers.
of a human, just something that would kill you slowly, and it's just like it just seems like it's a terrible way to go. And then it was the set, and you realize that in your brain's like, I'm fucked.
Right.
And this is there's
So now when you go snorkeling, is that all you think about? Is open water?
well, it's kind of like okay now
you put on your mask and you think Susan,
yeah,
Daniel.
if I can't
Susan, Daniel.
if I can't see the
Susan,
bottom,
Daniel.
I do. I mean that's honest to God's truth. I
You
get
just have visions of Susan.
yeah. It's like I got to be able to see land. I got to be able to see the bottom.
Right.
And
right.
otherwise I just get it's like I want to get back on the boat.
So for you, that's number 3, face your fears, and number 4, see a psychotherapist.
Well, I think I have, it's something I absolutely love.
Right.
Swimming in tropical waters.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best of the best.
But
it can be freaky because
it's completely freaky.
It's complete. Yeah, you really have to let your guard down.
It's rational fear.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like my mom, who is
Wait, did you say irrational or rational?
It's rational.
I think it's both.
I think, yeah.
I think it's irrational and rational all mixed together, which might be the worst of all.
Because my mother, who's a biologist and knows better, she's a scientist.
Right.
Is afraid to even go snorkeling in shallow water because when she was a child, her parents would warn her, "You're going to get pulled away by a riptide. Don't go wandering out in the surf." And that stuck with her, and she just like where the rest of our family, we'd go out snorkeling. She had a real hard time, and we had to coax her out. It's like it's a protected bay in Hawaii. It's calm water. Don't worry about it. There's no tide, but she still.
My dad used to tell me Chud was in the basement. My dad doesn't know what Chud is.
That's a shame. Everybody should know what.
Everybody should
have a Chud
know what
buddy.
Chud is.
So, okay, that's my number 4. What's your number 3?
My number 3, which we covered in episode number 19. And by the way, we did cover zombies in episode number 5.
Okay.
If you want to get in the Wayback Machine and go hear about our thoughts on zombies, go to episode number 5. Episode number 19 is the torture chamber. Much like our Patreon sponsor, the Patreon sponsor for tonight's episode, I too am not a fan of torture.
I love torture.
Eric, on the other hand, both films obviously like Hostel, like Devil's Rejects. Although Devil's Rejects kind of turns in sort of an interesting way. I will give Rob Zombie just a little pinch of love. He kind of turns the psychopathic family from the antagonists into the protagonists in kind of a weird way, and so the torture becomes.
I think that's more because Rob Zombie doesn't know how to write characters, but
possibly he might have stumbled into that from just purely a dumb luck standpoint. But when we talked about torture in episode 19, Horror Gone Too Far, I mean, obviously the one that really sticks out for me is Hostel. Hostel is, as is Devil's Rejects, both very, very grisly films. And I think, the thing isn't necessarily, there's not necessarily a hillbilly element, because there really wasn't a hillbilly element in Hostel. It's just, it is, again, the loss of control and the feeling of helplessness, right?
Right.
And so, like, going down the
your 4-point list,
my 4-point list of
facing your fears,
my psychiatric catastrophic checklist. I mean, in all cases, you're really not like, you can't regain the control. You can't face your fear because it's a foreign fear and it's an unknown fear, and you can't really notice your thoughts because you've got a drill going through your kneecap.
Right. And it's and the idea is to make you suffer.
Right.
And it's not, as opposed to a drill through the head and then you're dead. It's
right.
like it's the
torture, yeah. It's the prolonged and constant pain that, unlike, the Cenobites and the Order of the Gash, not the, what did I say, the Legion of the Gash? The Order of the Gash, the Cenobite team, unlike that, which would go on and on and on and ultimately probably result in the deadening of the soul and or the reverse enjoyment, and you would rewire your synapses. I think with something like Hostel or The Devil's Rejects, that kind of immediate sadism that is going to come to a fairly quick end. And it's going to be pretty grisly getting to that fairly quick end.
And I think in a lot of the torture in horror movies, it involves getting tricked into a situation.
Right.
And, like certainly in Hostel, it was his libido got in his way.
Right.
And wasn't paying attention to all the warning signs.
Right.
Granted, at a certain point, he goes into full hero mode.
Oh yeah.
So I thought,
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I thought about Hostel also as a model for it. God, I wouldn't want to go through that, but at the same time, he got psychologically pretty messed up, and he got it pretty bad. But he didn't get his eye scooped out like one of the girls.
The girl, yeah.
And he didn't get they didn't go full on Guantanamo on him. That he managed to break loose and actually wreak some vengeance. So he got
They
he
didn't
got
go
a little
Guantanamo
bit of
on him. They went sallow on him.
yeah.
They went Serbian tail on him.
Oh, that poor bastard. Speaking of that's another one being being tortured for someone else's amusement.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Ugh.
Right. Which, if anyone listening read my recent review of the other Rob Zombie film, 31, that film is less scary than The Devil's Rejects or Hostel because there's really no point to it. Spoiler alert, it's just a series of 5 vignettes where the protagonists, and I use that with a
Loosely.
lowercase p protagonists, square off with different heads like Sex Head and Death Head and Doom Head, and they are forced to fight to the death with these characters, but they don't obviously explain why it is they're doing that. In classic Rob Zombie fashion, there's no story, and the characters aren't really thought out other than being kind of
Red shirts for being tortured.
A very generic pastiche of some stereotype from the 1970s. Yeah.
Thank you, Rob Zombie.
Thank you, Rob Zombie. All right. So number 3 on your fearsome foursome list.
So when I'm gonna flip the situation here, and I'm going to take the role. This is role playing
of the bad guy.
I am now the villain.
Okay.
And this existence would be one of the most horrible existences possible, and that's being trapped in the body of Belial, the mutant twin from Basket Case. Right? Life would.
Okay, so you have to do a Belial impersonation. That was pretty good.
Something like that.
That was
yes. So, I think, life would suck being a malformed tumor of a creature, right?
Yes.
I mean, particularly when your conjoined twin, Dwayne, is a perfectly normal human.
Right.
And he gets to have a real life, real interactions with people, including hot chicks, right? And life is it's so unfair. I mean, it's like, how did you end up getting the bad side of the genetic pool? So, again, your life starts out and it sucks.
Right.
Your life as you grow older means you get stuffed in a basket by your brother, and yet you still have a psychological link to your brother. And
he throws in your face constantly.
Yeah, and it's like, how did I draw this lot in life, right?
You can understand why Belial was so pissed.
Yeah, he's a ugly, horny little mutant scab doomed to life in a basket.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was insane. So, and you can understand why.
Absolutely.
And he's also got this because of the telepathic link, he gets to share his madness, and you have to hide, and as other people come to the house, you can't greet them and say hello. You have to hide in the toilet. It's like that. That's another point where you go, man, I just drew the wrong straw. This sucks.
So this is Belial controlling what he can control.
It's like run away, hide in the toilet. So
run away, hide in the toilet, and create a psychic link to those who come within your sphere of influence.
And then the forced to doing just horrific things like going on a panty raid into your boyfriend's closet to he was a sick little creature, and it's got to be
what year was Basket Case again?
1982.
82. That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
and if you folks haven't seen Basket Case, it's funny. I mean, it's Belial is a puppet, a rubber puppet. But there's a picture of him. I remember, and
well, and I will say this just as an aside. Pretty much every single film we've talked about so far, save for maybe Hostel, is kind of a gateway film. It is like these are all sort of like these are kind of your entry points into these different psychoses.
Oh God, no! Hostel is not a gateway.
I said save for Hostel. Okay, save for Hostel.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, but he's a pretty disturbing little monster to look at. I know that
yeah.
I had a picture of him when we were talking back on our weirdest, the weird one-off movies.
Oh,
Basket Case was one of my weird one-off movies.
Oddballs and throwaways and rejects and weirdos.
Right, and
something like that.
Our own Scariest Amy, who is a hardened horror fan, was not familiar with Basket Case, and she goes, "What the hell is that? That's awful." And it's like, it's Basket Case. Come on. I guess now I will stipulate that I actually could handle being a dangerous little killer monster. I don't think that would be tough. I think being a critter or a gremlin would be a hell of a lot of fun, right? I think if we were going to flip the script and say, what is a monster that you wouldn't mind being? I wouldn't mind being a gremlin because they seem like they're having so much damn fun, just making mischief and causing all kinds of grief for people. Or if you're a critter, you get to lump together with your 50 best little critter buddies and roll around like a gigantic. Oh God, there's a game, Katamari ball. Right, and it was just it's like you're having a blast. I don't think Belial's having a blast. I think Belial is probably miserable and angry most of the time.
Right.
And and you're doomed. You're not going to have it as soon as someone spots you for reals. You're dead meat because nobody wants to put up with this mutant scab of a monster. So, anyway, that's my number. That's my number 3. What's your number 2?
But before we get there, the one-off oddball horror was episode 46.
Not that long ago.
That was posted. We posted that on November 26th, 2018. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, good Lord, we've been doing this for 15 months now. Go figure. We're still doing it.
All right. My number 3 worst case scenario is not a feeling. It is not a paranormal thing. It is dwarves.
Yes! Mike Campbell for the win.
Yes. So dwarves, of course, freak me out somehow, some way. Tomas from the orphanage. It was not really a dwarf, although there is a woman in there. The Brood from 1979. The science fiction psychological horror film directed by David Cronenberg, starring Oliver Reed and Samantha Egger.
Movie.
And then, of course, Don't Look Now, the Italian 1973 film directed by Nicholas Roeg. I mean, all 3 of those involve, strange little people. And I think it's just that, obviously, if I don't know any, I will say.
Little people?
I will say in fairness, I don't know any dwarves. And I did look up because I know that's sort of an ever-evolving piece of terminology, and dwarf is the appropriate term. I don't know any dwarves, and I'm sure if I met a dwarf, I'm sure they would be perfectly pleasant. I know they are perfectly pleasant.
I could hang with Peter Dinklage all day. That guy would be a blast.
I'm sure Peter Dinklage is a very nice person. It's just, I think the thing in a horror context, it's like a lot of things. It's, whether it's, some of the end scenes in The Shining that are such a different and complete non sequitur. It's seeing, a person of diminutive stature taking on this kind of powerful role it's just off-putting.
Well, oftentimes it's the switch. It's you expect it's a child and it's not.
Right, which was certainly the case with Don't Look Now, the Nicholas Roeg film. Is at the end of the film, it focuses. Obviously, it focuses on Donald Sutherland's, it's the loss of his daughter and whatnot, but he is in a palazzo in Italy, and he's chasing this very small person, which he thinks might be sort of a ghostly manifestation of his daughter. And of course, it turns out to be this hideous female dwarf who pulls out a meat cleaver and chops away at Donald Sutherland. And I think, still one of the most horrifying scenes ever in film.
And it goes from
and Don't Look Now did very well in the top 100. I think it was like in the 40s, wasn't it? Maybe 50s,
no,
40s, 50s.
It is.
We'll get back to you on that one.
It's a really heady, beautiful movie.
Oh yeah.
The horror is it's a slow builder, and it comes at you in a rush at the end. Now it also the end sequence is trippy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, for all those people, we saw Us
right
over the last week, and you can see our review, which
yes.
I very much enjoyed it.
Eric gave it 4.5 stars.
4.5, not quite.
I was going to go 4.75.
Yeah, almost
4 3/4.
Mike almost would put a perfect score to it. It is it's a brilliant, fun. I think there's a lot of Tarantino in Jordan Peele. I think his ability to write dialogue, create interesting characters, and to get into your headspace.
He certainly uses music in an interesting way.
Oh God, yeah. But fair warning: if you don't like twisty, thinky endings, Us is going to have one of those for you.
Oh yeah. We will be maybe going down the Us rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. At some point in the near future.
All right. So
we'll have a full Us episode.
So dwarves and Mr. Campbell are
yes.
Now. Okay, so tell me this:
I don't think I've ever had. I don't think I ever had a bad experience with a dwarf as a child.
But there's something about it that triggers it. Like, do you struggle with Leprechaun? Do you like Warwick Davis as the evil?
As the Leprechaun. Yeah, no, I think it's as I say, I liken it to it's just enough of a non sequitur that if there's already sort of horrifying dramatic tension within the film, and then you throw this strange non sequitur on top of it, it is enough to sort of put me over the edge.
Yeah. So
and I don't suffer from fear of the Leprechaun because of Jennifer Aniston. So she saved me from that.
Nice.
All right, what do you got? Number 2.
Well, so my number 2 is I did this for you, our listening audience.
All right.
I watched a movie that I didn't think I would actually be willing to sit and watch, and I was right. I think being the middle link in the Human Centipede, being Lindsay, would be.
Did you watch it?
Yeah.
What? You said you would never watch it.
I know, and that's why this is one of those things where it's just like,
oh my God! So what'd you think?
You
don't want to be Lindsay.
It's horrible. It's
not a bad film though.
No. It's stomach turning. It's
sure.
It's completely revolting.
Right.
I think that I was not a fan. Dr. Hyder was over the top. I think it's just the concept of it is it's boffo.
Yeah.
And I think I could have picked Katsuro, who's the of course, because the Asian guy, it's like, hey, because swap out, I'd be the Asian guy. But you're being the front end of the centipede isn't the worst position to be in the centipede. Being the middle link, because for obvious reasons, when you're going mouth to anus, you're gonna have to digest what's coming from the link in front of you. No thanks. No thank you. And then, and part of this, when I was describing, it's like, well, even if I survived, because
right.
Lindsay's the only survivor.
Right.
Although it's sort of questionable at the end of the movie as to, well, she's still alive, but what is her eventual fate?
Right.
It's sort of up in the air, and I don't think I'm actually going to go out and watch any of the sequels. I
Sure.
hear they're absolutely atrocious.
I will say I don't want to. I don't generally stump for other podcasts, but I will say you should listen to the Alec Baldwin podcast. Here's the Thing. He has a podcast called Here's the Thing, and it's actually he does have on occasion some interesting guests. He interviews Tom Six, the director of the Centipede films, along with his sister, who is, I think she's a producer, if I remember correctly, and they talk about the origin behind Human Centipede, where it all came from, and it is a fascinating tale.
It's so wrong.
So while you don't want to be Lindsay, you might want to listen to the origin because it's actually quite fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it is so goddamn yucky.
It is.
Well, and it's not just that; it's humiliating.
Right.
It's painful. It's horrifying. It's like you don't. It's like you're trapped. It is it's torture, but torture in some of the most humiliating, debilitating ways. And the thing is, like, if imagine yourself as the middle link of the chain, you're staring at the butt of the person in front of you, and you can't get out and look around. You're stuck. Right. You can hear things, and then you also have the shame of passing on through your system to the third link in the chain. So you don't like I thought about, it's like, oh, maybe being the back end of the chain, at least you wouldn't have to you wouldn't feel the guilt of subjecting the link behind you to what you've just done. I mean, it's just so nasty on so many levels. I just you couldn't do anything but crawl and sleep and be at the mercy of, it's like you're trying to shuffle around.
You can't even really crawl because your knees are handicapped.
Yeah, it's just
you're locked into that position.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, and they the producers of this movie knew how horrible it is. It's just a nasty situation. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a more disgusting situation to be caught in. And even if you survived, even if you were cut free, you would be scarred all over your face and your ass.
Right.
And you would be your PTSD would be off the charts.
Right.
So that's my number 2.
All right, my number 1 is kind of a twist on the horror scenario construct, and it involves children, and not evil children, but sort of like in a parental way, in a caring way, feeling for children who get stuck in horrible situations in horror films, which we've never really talked about. We've always talked about the child as an evil construct. We've never talked about the child as a sympathetic character.
Sure.
And there's lots of kids in films who unfortunately get stuck into and have no control. They don't have a psychotherapist yet.
Right.
They have no way to face their fears, and they are helpless. I mean, truly helpless.
Like Samuel and the Babadook.
The child in The Ring, whose name was Aiden, who of course, Rachel, finds her son, Aiden, watching the videotape in The Ring. The 5 daughters in The Conjuring, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April. They of course end up playing the game hide and clap.
Scariest claps ever,
which of course brings out Volok the nun. And another couple that I thought of as well that fall into this, it's like, they didn't ask for this. It just sort of came to them, and they truly are helpless. Was Mercy and Jonas from The Witch. So those are some of the ones that I think are kind of interesting, just because children really just they don't have that opportunity to be able to fully understand, to really understand how the situation has come to them, what they're supposed to do, what the appropriate response is going to be. I mean, kind of like in the same way, in sort of the flip side of the same coin with regard to the fast moving zombies. In that case, it's coming at you so fast, you don't have the capacity to process it. So in this case, you just as a child don't have the mental acuity to be able to process what's happening to you.
But I think that there is something to be said about the heroic children. I mean, there is also a strong tradition of kids as protagonists who are taking it to the monster. I mean, Monster Squad, of course.
Sure.
We've got It.
Yeah.
You have Silver Bullet. You've got a lot of plucky kids taking it to the monsters, and sometimes usually succeeding.
Yes.
Every now and again, you have something like
I don't know if I'd call Corey Haim a plucky kid, though.
Yeah, he was in a wheelchair, but yeah,
He was in the Silver Bullet,
right,
is what he was in.
But what was the one we just saw? Summer of '84.
Summer of '84, yeah.
Where the plucky kids think that they probably solved it for the day, and then the ending.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah,
and that was the best thing about, I think, Summer of '84, which
right.
I think.
But sometimes the force that they're dealing with is so malevolent, the kids don't have and can't have the right response.
True.
Yeah,
they don't have the wisdom.
Right, and that ultimately, I mean, that manufactures this like deep empathy for the kids because they're screwed. I mean, they are really screwed. They don't have the mental capacity. They don't have the acuity. They don't have the ability to respond to what's being put in front of them.
Although Haley Joel Osment did have himself a therapist.
Oh, that's right.
In The Sixth Sense. So to help get him through it.
And he did.
Yeah.
So it works.
Sure.
Psychotherapy works. Give it a try. All right, what's your number one?
My number one is going back to playing the villain. Another character who had just a terrible life before the movie started, during the movie, and wasn't going to have a happy ending.
Dragula.
No, this is Giorgio, the castle freak.
Oh, God. Yeah.
First off and foremost,
horrible scenario.
He's missing his junk.
Right.
And I don't know. I think he might. I think the thought is that it might have been either torn off by his mother, or he might have torn it off himself. It is just at some point
maybe he and his mother did it together.
However it happened.
He is a capital E eunuch.
Yes, it was kind of nasty, and so he was, as a boy, he was a victim of child abuse, left to die in the basement of a dank castle by his abusive mother.
Hence, castle
freak. And then he became a lonely soul, only visited upon by his torturous mom. So he had no interaction with anybody.
Hence, castle freak.
And he's forgotten, but then eventually in order to, because now that there's like some new people are in the castle, and he wants to meet them and maybe torture them and kill them and eat them, but in order to break through his chains,
though, he's got no other choice.
Yeah, I mean,
he has to.
He breaks his own thumbs to break out of his chains.
Right.
There really isn't much of an upside for being Giorgio. I mean, he's not a particularly powerful monster.
Right.
He's just a freak. He's nasty and horrific looking. He still has he's got the messed up mind of being a human who's been tortured and abused for his whole life. He has no impulse control. He's a desperate creature bent on rape and revenge. And that's not a life that I want to have to participate in. I think he's also kind of a cannibal. It's a non-starter for me. It's just, Giorgio's had a bad life.
You know what I'm hearing as a result of this whole discussion is don't be in a horror film.
Yes.
Do not get involved in a horror film.
Being a Dracula-like vampire wouldn't be the worst existence.
Maybe like a David Bowie-esque vampire.
Or, being a kaiju would be kind of fun.
maybe being Leatherface wouldn't be terrible. Like
No.
you have a whole family.
Yeah, that's right.
They're all very supportive.
Right. They're all a bunch of mad hillbillies.
They're enabling your cannibalism.
Yeah. In this case, being Giorgio, you're a cannibal club of one, right? It's like you've got no support system, and I think that he's also missing a good chunk of his tongue.
Oh,
I think he chewed his tongue off. I think it was part of the deal. Yeah, and so you're not exactly going to have a very meaningful conversation with a therapist.
And Castle Freak is being remade by Fangoria, and we expect that to be out in 2019, maybe?
Sometime soon.
Yeah.
I think that they're doing they're doing something called Satanic Panic is their next movie.
Right. Right.
And then but it's been greenlit.
Not to be confused with the Portland Horror Film Festival Satanic Panic.
I'm trying to talk, actually, trying to see if Gwen and Brian can actually get Satanic Panic to show as the Satanic Panic for...
They are showing Abby.
Yeah. That's
the
right.
1975, I think.
With William Marshall.
Yes, which is a blaxploitation version of The Exorcist. Abby.
Yeah. And that's going to be great.
Go see it. I think that's coming out. I think it's going to happen in May sometime.
Yes. So for our Portland fans and listeners, we know we got a bunch of you out there.
There's a couple.
Yep.
There's a couple.
Portland Horror Film Festival. And, I think if you actually go to the Portland Horror Film Festival site, I know that we were able to get early admission tickets for Us.
Yeah.
I think they're going to do it again for Pet Sematary.
Yeah, that's right.
So I think there's an early showing next Tuesday. Got to talk to Gwen and find out if that's actually going down.
Yep.
So, all right, let's go grave digging. Mike, what do you got?
I have something that popped up in a certain publication called Vanity Fair this week.
Okay.
Which, to me, it's interesting because, as we were just talking about the film Us, which we can't stop talking about.
Yep.
I think when a film like Us makes a dent, makes an impression with something like Vanity Fair.
$70 million worth of impression.
Yeah. I think horror has arrived in a mighty way in 2019.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's very, very emblematic of how horror has become much more of an artful take on sort of classic exploitation. Anyway, they did a whole article about the importance, not just about the importance of Us. They did a whole article about the importance of Chud. So if you're watching Chud as it relates to Us, so if you were watching Us, this isn't a spoiler per se. Tunnels. But in the opening sequence, there is the young girl is watching television, and propped up next to the TV is a VHS.
Adelaide.
There's a VHS copy of Chud.
Oh.
And this article in Vanity Fair, which I'm not gonna regurgitate or spoil for anyone, I encourage people to go read it. It draws out all the parallels between Us and Chud, and why that is possibly the most important Easter egg in the entire film.
So I think that's going to demand that all of you out there watch Chud before you go see Us.
Yes. Watch Chud, see Us.
Then read the Vanity Fair article.
Then read the Vanity Fair article. We may point to it off of our website here soon.
Nice.
Yeah. What do you got for your grave digging this week?
This week, it's a set your DVR moment.
What?
Well, What We Do in the Shadows is is coming out on
FX.
television, and it's
FX?
probably showing, because today we are recording on a Wednesday.
Yep.
It's showing tonight, and I have my DVR recording it.
Hell yes.
It is the pilot is being directed by Taika Waititi, and and it was written by Jermaine Clement.
Right.
So
does it have any of the same actors that were in the original?
It's a new group of actors. It is still
none of the swearwolves.
No, because they're now in Staten Island. They're not.
Oh, okay.
They've got a new house.
Right.
But it has the look, and it has the same cheeky humor, and I think there's
so they're Americans. They're not.
One's a Romanian.
They're not Kiwis.
No, one's an Ottoman.
Okay.
And I think more Ottoman than Turkish, because he was once a fierce Ottoman warrior, and he still wears his armor. he really struggles with the day-to-day life in the modern world. And then there's a husband and wife couple who are Brits.
Oh, okay.
And they've relocated, and there's this funny bit where they said, it's like, well, we had to relocate to America because the Europeans had it in for vampires, and one of them goes, they didn't like the color of our skin, and it goes, or the fact that we like to suck their blood and eat them. It's like, well, maybe more that than the color of our skin. So it has some really fun that same kind of wry humor, and being able to riff off of all those great vampirisms.
Yeah.
That what we do in the shadows, the movie, which is still one of my all-time favorites in my top 5.
That's right. And it made its way into the top 100 list.
Yeah, quite high up actually.
Yeah,
I think it's a lot of people's favorites. I think it might have been. Did it beat Shaun of the Dead for top horror comedy? Or
We'll have to get back to you on that one.
But it's going to be. It's a 10-episode run. Wednesdays at I think it's at 10 o'clock. So it might be actually in about an hour.
Yeah. All right.
So that's that. I have one last little grave digging, a little extra, and that is to note the passing of Larry Cohen.
Oh, good segue, because I'm going to take us out with a tagline from a Larry Cohen film.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So Larry Cohen is a
huckster extraordinaire, one of the greatest guerrilla filmmakers ever to set foot on the planet.
I think that was a Fred Williamson gave him that credit as the greatest guerrilla filmmaker of all time.
Yes.
Martin Scorsese says he has the maverick sensibility. He would do crazy stuff like driving a taxi on the street without actually doing any prep. Not a taxi on the sidewalk.
On the sidewalk,
and scrambling and just to get a reaction from normal pedestrians.
No film permits.
Yeah, and he is a capital C character, or was.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So the
very very sad Larry Cohen passed. So I'm going to take us out from a 1985 film that Larry Cohen did called The Stuff.
Yes.
Is it eating you, or are you eating it? The Stuff.
Nice. Isn't it the other way around?
It is the other way around. I screwed it up.
Try it again. Take 2.